Basically, this generation is more liberal, more tolerant, more Democrat-leaning than the one before. It's not just because they're young.
For another point of view, it's Hard News with Russell Brown and Wammo on Kiwi.
He is head honcho over at publicaddress.net, the Hard News blog, also Media 7 on TVNZ7. Russell joins us. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
Of course, the big news of the day is John Key meeting the Warner's executives yesterday, and now he's gone away and spoken to his colleagues and trying to figure out what they can offer Warner's in return for the Hobbit here in New Zealand.
Yeah, and it's kind of alarming what they've already put on the table, which is, hey, we'll change our labour laws for you.
Now, can we get to the bottom of, and can you explain, okay, if they were to be changing these labour laws, exactly what would they be tweaking and what would it mean for workers?
Okay, the case that Warners are apparently worried about, well, according to John Key, is the so-called Bryson case, which was decided in 2005, where a model maker working at Weta took Weta to court, took the producers of the Lord of the Rings film to court, to press his case that he was in fact an employee of them and not an independent contractor, which had quite significant implications for his redundancy. And that case was very closely watched, but in the end, it's not the precedent that some people seem to think it is. In fact, John Key doesn't seem to know anything about the case. He thought it was last year. Basically, in the original judgment and in all the legal opinions around it, people have said, well, okay, this is an interesting case. The Supreme Court was right to find this guy and against Weta, but it has very little application to the industry in general.
Right, okay. So it was very specific to that particular case.
Yeah, it's very specific to that particular case.
But in legal terms, these cases are often held up as, the test cases, aren't they? That everything is measured against.
Yeah, except this one really isn't. And if you read, I've actually, for my sins, have been reading a couple of the opinions about it, and it's not a precedent for the general industry, although it's possible that Warner's thinks it is. I mean, the thing is for these guys, they don't want to get stuck in either a court action that goes to the New Zealand Supreme Court, or get stuck paying redundancy to someone they didn't think was an employee. So you can sort of see their view, but basically the Bryson case was made possible by the Labour government passing the Employment Relations Act, which replaced the Employment Contracts Act, and actually introduced a different sort of test for who was a contractor and who wasn't. And this thing of who's an independent contractor, who's an employee, is actually really right at the centre of this whole thing.
Okay. So do you think Warner's, though, specifically heard about this case, and this is what they're worried about?
I don't know. All we're hearing this from is from John Key.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, and it's entirely possible there's a degree of opportunism in there. It would not surprise me at all. I actually don't think that lets the Actors Union off the hook. I think they've got to own even the unintended consequences of their actions, and this one just seems like it keeps on giving. It's been a spectacularly unsuccessful industrial action, because for all the spin, basically they completely caved last week and are now discussing standard terms and conditions through the so-called Pink Book, which is something they could have done 2 years ago. And all the email correspondence exists to show that they could have done this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it really is, they have completely caved, they've got nothing they wanted, and all hell has broken loose. So,
and now, because they've lost that PR war, it's much harder for them to fight in the media against these possible changes because of Warner's coming into New Zealand.
Indeed, they put themselves in a spectacularly weak position, and I think that last week Warner's may well have looked to exploit the weakness of the actors' position. I mean, all the timing around the announcement that the boycott was being lifted, I think that Warner's may well have pulled a swifty on the actors there. But on the other hand, that's what you get when you try and play hardball. And it's now becoming clear that although this was all ostensibly about, we just want a meeting with Peter Jackson, the actors put the don't work order, the global don't work order, was in place before this formal record of request for a meeting with Peter Jackson. They probably had to go earlier on, but it's astonishing that if the whole thing was about a meeting with Jackson, why did they put the boycott in place in advance?
Yeah.
They were playing hardball, and I think they've been slapped down by a big hard corporation, frankly.
Big time. And losing this PR war as well. They've lost the voter confidence from the New Zealand public. So,
I think public sentiment's running about 80-20 against them.
Yeah, so now is an opportunity for the government to put through these law changes, much like they did with the 90-day bill, but through a sleepwalking public.
Yes, and I think that's not an unrealistic reading of the situation. I think that may well be what's going on, because certainly the government jumped out when there wasn't really any particular reason to, and said, "Hey, look, labour laws are on the table." And the irony is that Simon Whipp, the Australian unionist, who's the bad guy in the middle of all this, finally started talking to the media this week.
Yeah.
And at the end of his Morning Report interview, he said, hopefully we'll see law changes along the lines of those in Ireland.
And what happened there?
You may recall I wrote about last week on Public Address. The Irish Equity has done what New Zealand Equity would have done had it been even minimally competent, and actually pursues a law change that goes in the opposite direction to what the government now wants to do, which is basically to allow independent contractors under certain circumstances to collectively bargain, because competition law here and in Ireland prevents that. And they showed patience, and they showed dedication, and they made their case, and they got that law change. And that's why, if the film was to go to Ireland, it would go into a benign environment. Okay. Because they've gotten it right, and unfortunately our lot haven't.
So are there questions of sovereignty here as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think it's kind of creepy that the government would be promising a law change for a single production. Being made by a big corporation, but
do you think the door's open for them to not make wide sweeping changes right across the employment spectrum, but just specifically to the film industry?
Yeah, well, hopefully, or even specifically to the movie. I don't care. It's the less sweeping, the better. Okay. Because it looks like they're going to do something. But if they change the entire labour law environment over this one movie, then something really smells here. And there's absolutely opportunism at play here. I think the unions have played it so badly that they're in a weak position, and the government, can say, well, we have to do something.
The problem
it's been a really, like I said, a spectacularly unsuccessful gambit, this one.
Isn't the problem here that now the movie smells like a pile of poo?
Yeah, I think that is a problem for them. Probably not such a big problem in the wider world, but one of the things that made the Lord of the Rings movies work was that everyone felt good about them.
Yeah, we thought the New Zealand public felt good, the people working on them felt good, the movie company felt good, the government was good, but this time round, well, I don't know. Yeah, quite possibly. Although, you look at all those people who are going to be working on the film, they feel good about the work they're doing. So I think that that needs bearing in mind. But you're right. They need better sign writers. I don't know if you saw some of those signs at the parties. They were pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but no, there's a sense of taint about it, isn't there?
There is, yeah. It's a bad taste in the mouth, I don't know. Well, hopefully things improve. We'll see how it goes. No doubt we'll be talking about it again next week. We'll see what the government comes up with.
Right up.
Thanks, Russell. Cheers. Russell Brown at publicaddress.net, also the Media 7 show, TVNZ.